Hey guys, this is going to be another quick Linux command video. Check the link in the description for more info and for copy and paste examples. The Linux file command will check and display the type of a file. So you can check it, use it to check file types like this. Like let's say, for example, we have a bunch of files in this directory. You can say file test1.txt and it's going to give you the type. This is ASCII text. You can do the same thing on, let's say, .py, and it's still ASCII text. It's a text file. Given it's a Python script, but it's still a text file. So you can also do this on a binary, like say the binary for the ls command. So you could say file usr bin ls. That's going to tell you this is an ELF 64-bit Pi executable, and a bunch of stuff about it, how it's dynamically linked and so on and so forth. For GNU Linux, stripped, a little bit about the binary and the format. So you can also use this on, for example, file, another type of binary, lib64 ld Linux. So basically run that on this. Now that's a symbolic link. Now let's say if we wanted to take a look at the file that it's linked to. You can say file, copy, paste that in there. And yeah, so we can see here, this is an ELF 64-bit LSB shared object, dynamically linked, and there's the build ID and it's stripped. So this first one up here that we looked at, this first binary, is an executable binary, whereas this one is a shared object. Basically, this is a library file. You already know that because it's a .so file. And this one is an actual binary, obviously, because it's a command that we run. So anyways, we can, another place where this file, this is useful for stuff like this. If you don't know if something's like a compressed file, like someone just gives you a file and you don't know if it happens to be like compressed, if it's zipped, b-zipped, g-zipped, maybe they just didn't put an extension on a file. Is it a binary, a script, or what is it? This is great for checking files. These ones I use in this example, we kind of already knew what they were, but this would be useful for stuff like that. But there are some other things you can do with it too. We're going to show you. So you can use this on special files. So for example, file dev SDA. So run it on this disk device, and it will tell you a block special. Now if you say SDA1, the first partition on this drive, same thing, block special. It does tell you a different device name, but it's still just telling you that it is a block device. So there, we can get a little bit more info on that. I'm going to show you that in just a minute, but all right, I'm going to show you this first though. File, let's check something in the proc file system. Proc CPU info. Now, empty, an empty file. Now we know there's stuff in there. The proc file system is basically a special file system mapping to structures that are in memory within the Linux kernel. So if you cat this, it's definitely not empty. It has a bunch of stuff in it, even though it doesn't have any physical space on the file system. So let's take a look at those in a different way. There is actually a parameter for the file command called -s. So this will give you, this allows you to actually read more information from special files, like device files and files in your proc file system. So you added -s, and we're actually going to need root permission. Now that it's actually trying to read the file, we need root permission to read from a device file. So sudo, let's just becomes root here. Now, when we ran file dev SDA, it just tells us block special, right? If you add the S to this, it's actually going to read it, and it will tell us that it is a DOS MBR boot sector. So it tells us a little bit more about the type of file. So we can tell this is a bootable disk, and it has a master boot record, boot part. Basically, the boot part of the disk is master boot record rather than like GPT or whatever. So anyways, let's see here. So we can also do this with 1, and this is going to tell us that this is our first partition on it, and it says Linux ext4 file system data. So it even tells us the file system type on there. And a similar thing with 2. 3, oops. Yeah, yeah, what else can we look at? So let's try 5 just for fun. So swap file, it'll tell us that that's a swap file. I mean, you could see it using other tools if you want. Now let's try this on, if you say file on proc CPU info, it's going to show up as empty. But if you try a -s, it's going to tell you ASCII text with very long lines. So it's not really formatted really to be read as a text file, even though that's basically kind of what it is. But yeah, there you go. Gives us a little bit more info. That's kind of interesting. Just that you can do that. It's a little bit of an oddity. This is not normally how you would use this. You would not normally use the file command to do this. Like, you don't need to identify disk partitions with the file command. You can just use lsblk or other tools like fdisk. But just interesting to know that. I thought that was pretty interesting. But typically you're just going to do this to identify mystery files. Like if someone gave you a file or someone gave you some software that they handed off to you that you don't have any documentation on, and maybe they left the company or something and you have to figure out how to get it working, you might want to identify some files. It can be helpful for that type of task. You're normally not going to do this with it. So what else can we show you about it? Okay, dereferencing links. So let's exit on out of here. Now we see there's some links in here, right? Now if we want to let's say file link. Now see, link is it's a link, symbolic link to test.txt, and it says link, symbolic link. So your file command will identify as a link. That's correct. But let's say if you want to dereference it, right? You can say -l, and that will dereference it to the actual file that was pointed to and tell you ASCII text. Now that might be useful if you're doing a lot of these in a series, or maybe if you have a link to a link to a link, something like that. Or if you're using this in a script, it might be useful. So yeah, one place you might want to use this now, in case you want MIME, like a MIME type string instead of a human readable string, you can say start out with file test1.txt. It's normally going to give you output like that, right? So you can also pass a -i to it and give you the MIME type string like this. You know, plain text, char set, US ASCII, rather than just telling you plainly it's ASCII text. Anyways, if you want to uncompress a file, so let's see, do we have any? All right, so we have some gzipped files here. You could say file. Now you could say copy this, paste it on there. So this will tell us that it is a compressed, it's gzip compressed data, so that's kind of useful. Now you could, if you want to check what type of file is inside that, now we have a pretty good guess because of the extension txt-gz, but let's say if we didn't, we could say -z, and it's going to tell us that it's ASCII text that's been gzip compressed. So was output.txt, and yeah, there you go. Gzip compressed data was, yeah, but it's so that's kind of useful to have. And if you don't want to unpack it, but you want to know what's inside or what type of file is inside. Now, if you don't want to change the access time on something, you can do a -p. So that won't change the access time on the file when you check it. Otherwise, checking it could change the last touch time for a file. Although that's system dependent, and I have not seen that change on this particular system at all. So that's been kind of useless for me. And I don't have a real reason to do that. But if you wanted to make sure you're not actually modifying any times on any of your files, you can use a -p. And that's about it for the file command. That's probably more than you'll ever want to know about this command. Remember, check the links in the description for more info. Hit the subscribe button for more useful content like this. We also have a ton of other more interesting content covering things like coding, hardware, software, servers, Raspberry Pis, 3D printing, and a whole lot more. Hopefully you found this useful. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys on that next video.